Hi everybody, Scott here. In this video I'm going to respond to a subscriber's email who sent me a message just asking some questions about the MBTI and how, its validity and how to look at it. Is there truth in it? Is there not? Is it scientific? Is it not? And I thought the best way would be to read through the subscriber's email with their permission and go through it and just share my thoughts on it. I think where I want to take this is that when anyone has a hard line opinion on something, the moment they do, they limit themselves. And I think that'll come through as I unpack the email. And I'm not saying the subscriber has that approach. I think they have the opposite approach. They're trying to bring a balance to the conversation about, is the MBTI real? Is it not? How do we look at it? There seems to be truth in it. People think that it has no scientific backing and so on. So I'm just going to read through it and share my thoughts as they come to mind. Hopefully trying to, I guess, present a balanced view. And these are just my own thoughts based on my own experience, what I've come to understand. So the subscriber says, I'm currently a junior in college, majoring in social work. I have 2 to 3 years to go, including grad school, but I intend to finish with a license in clinical social work and counselling. I currently have a professor who's very intelligent and respectable. I like him a lot. I won't assume his type, but he is more facts, debates, and research. MBTI came up in a conversation with him recently, and he wasn't shy in arguing his stance against its validity. The MBTI was inspired by Jung, but it is far from scientifically based, he says. So a couple of thoughts is I've come to see that there is generally a love-hate relationship that people come to have with the MBTI. Those that go on to do higher education and go through the education system, they do a psychology degree or master's or become a clinical psychologist. They go through that system of everything must be measured. Anything that can't be measured doesn't exist. And everything is controlled, like as much as possible through, building the hypothesis, doing the tests, coming up with the results of those tests and so on. And it's all sort of trying to create a rigidity in order to find truth, to find facts. In and of itself, there's no issue with that whatsoever. But what it does do is, I believe it kind of closes people off. It's almost like a form of conditioning, and there is good reason in one sense for that conditioning in regards to clinical practice and basing things off scientific research and proven case studies and all of this sort of thing. And in and of itself, there's no issue with that whatsoever. However, it does that conditioning, I believe, for some people, cuts them off to the nuances of life. And you could say that psychology studies the human being like an animal. And I think there's problems with that. And that a lot of people that go to see a therapist, well, this is sort of going off in a different direction, but you could say that there's the art of counseling and then the science of psychology. And it's been proven time and time again that it's the therapeutic relationship that promotes and brings change. So in a sense, you could say the more scientific a person becomes in their approach to therapy, potentially the less effective they could become in promoting change, because it becomes quite sterile in regards to the assessment and so on. It's good to have a balance, in fact, of the clinical and the personal. Again, it's all about balance. But bringing it back to this person's email, the higher people go in education, the more boxed in they become in some respects. It's not always the case, but there is a vulnerability to that. And that when they view the MBTI based on their scientific conditioning that has happened to themselves through their education, they see the flawedness of it from that place, from that scientific place. And they've been conditioned and trained to not trust anything that doesn't have hasn't gone through the rigorous process of psychological research and results and so on. Looking at it from the MBTI side, people. There is clear evidence that there is something in it by human beings' response to it. In that you could read a description of an INFP to somebody and a description of an ESTJ to somebody, and depending on which type they are, you can almost guarantee that they're not going to resonate with one of them. That there'll be one that that sounds pretty accurate, and the other one will be just like, no, it doesn't make much sense to me. There's clear evidence through people's testimony and the plethora of articles and videos and all that on the internet to suggest that there is something to it. Now that's one thing that Jung had going for him, was that he was open to the spiritual, he was open to the things that can't be explained. He chose to accept that there are phenomena that can't be measured or explained, that run outside of the scientific model. And I guess it comes down to people's belief system. If we came from monkeys and there's evolution and all of that, then chances are they're not going to be open to the spiritual and things that can't be measured. And to some degree, the MBTI has sort of laced through it this sense that there's things going on in people that can't be measured, or measured very easily. So that's a long segue to basically saying that people that come through the scientific background see the flaw or the hole in the MBTI and throw it out completely, when actually there is a huge amount of truth in it, and it actually has something very significant to offer when it comes to understanding people. And on one simple level is it contradicts, if you like, or it challenges the stereotypes and culture that the male has to be a thinker and the female has to be a feeler, or that's the only females feel and males are logical and factual, and that's it. There are clear differences between men and women, but there is no doubt that there are feeling men and thinking women, and that you could almost say there's a stereotype of that introverts women are to be introverted, men are to be more extroverted, forceful, pushy, loud, out there. And the reality is there's introvert men and extroverted women. And you could probably go to any extroverted thinking female and she will report some aspect of feeling as though she was made to feel wrong or defective, that she's this or that, and she needs to soften up, or she needs to write all of this sort of talk, or the introverted feeling male needs to toughen up, needs to become more aggressive, needs to be more logical in their assessment of things. And so the MBTI kind of shatters that whole idea and creates a lot of room for people to be who they are. And I think that's what one of the things that the MBTI offers is to the level that it can't be explained or boxed in or scientifically proven. The looseness, you could say, of it is actually what enables people to identify with it, and it can help explain things that, in a sense, I think science can't explain. So let me just keep reading. He showed me, like a child on Christmas morning, mind you, several articles and studies that prove that, particularly when using it in the context of career choice or placement, is an inaccurate and invalid and unethical in certain instances. A tool of personality measurement, particularly regarding its test-retest reliability. Many of them consider it fraudulent as horoscopes and tarot cards. Okay, so there's a whole lot in there. Let me go through it one by one. Now, in regards to career choice, I think what is meant by it being used unethically is when it gets used to hire someone. So it's like, okay, we need someone to do data entry and filing and some kind of systems management. Okay, well, let's get an ISTJ in. And so then they start testing people to find their ISTJ to put them in that role. When I did my training, when I did the course to be certified to submit the MBTI and provide the assessment, the official assessment, it was made very, very clear that it is not to be used as a way to recruit. That was considered unethical and unprofessional, and I tend to agree with that. And so, from their perspective, they agree it's unethical to use it in regards to recruiting. When somebody's trying to find career, that's a different matter, and I think there is validity in looking at a person's type, finding out what their best fit type is, and then looking at, based on those cognitive functions, what careers may more resonate with them. And for the most part, people have either done work that represents their type, or when they see some of the career options that are considered most suited to that type, it resonates with them. But it's just a guide. It's not a rigid system, because there's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be people that there's going to be SJ engineers, where engineers are more considered NT types. So there's always going to be outliers. There's going to be thinking therapists as opposed to feeling therapists. There's going to be introverted entertainers and all of this sort of thing. So there's always going to be exceptions to that. And from that perspective, it's really just about, when it comes to career choice, as a helpful option or guide to suggest some potential pathways. But to look at it and go, okay, these are the only things I should be doing based on my type, that would be an inappropriate response to the information that the career MBTI career report could provide. it's a way of looking at career choice and placement. So let me keep going here. Yeah, now the test-retest reliability, that is another problem. And I've gone into this in another video, but the main reason that people get different types is because the MBTI is now in popular culture, and there's 1,001 different tests that people, or assessments people can do online, and they go, and a person goes into it answering it just from their own frame of reference, without any often without any prep. And what I mean by that is, again, when I did my training, they made it very clear that when a person is doing the assessment, that they have to have the right mindset, because the results are purely based on the answers to the questions. So when someone comes out on with a different type to what they got last time, it's because they answered the questions differently. And they could have answered some of those questions differently for because maybe they did the test at work one time and then they did the test at home the other time, or they had a stressful time at work when they did it at one time, and the next time they were really relaxed, in bed before they went to sleep, and they answered it. All of these can have a factor on the way that we perceive the self. So it was drilled into us to always ask the person to answer the questions based on an at-home mindset rather than an at-work mindset, or answering it from an on-holiday mindset as opposed to a working mindset. Because we often do things in our working life, or even in school, that don't come naturally. It comes, we might have to extrovert ourselves more in the workplace than we would naturally, or we have to be more logical and methodical than we would normally be in our normal lives. And so often people answer it based on what they're doing and how they've shifted the way they do things versus what they would do naturally. So with the MBTI, it's looking for the inborn traits. The whole idea of the theory is that that we are born with innate inborn traits that, for the most part, are unchanging throughout the lifespan, and that there is a need to it's about finding those inborn traits. So we ask for an at-home mindset. Forget about work, forget about all the things you need to do or the way you need to do them. You've got the weekend to yourself. There are no solid commitments, in a sense. You're free to do life on this particular weekend however you would naturally want to do it. And from that position, answer the questions. And the questions are intentionally dichotomous. Do you like parties or do you like being at home? This sort of thing, to force a choice that will help to hopefully bring out the inborn trait. And with the tests, or the assessment that I provide through this CPP. Step 1 has 93 questions, I believe, and step 2, which goes into a lot more depth, has 144 questions. So there's a lot of questions, and we could answer some like extroverted, introverted. We could answer some extroverted, some introverted, but we're looking for just the slight preference, even if it's slight, like 51-49 introvert or extrovert. For the purpose of just simplifying it down to find the best fit type. Now, it doesn't mean that if comes out as an INTJ, that they don't have some extroverted facets or some feeling facets. And so that's what causes a lot of confusion for people, is they say, oh, for thinking and feeling, I'll sort of write straight down the middle. It's because there is a mixture of thinking and feeling preferences. And the step 2 results that are available during the 144 questions breaks each of the 4 dichotomies down into 5 facets for each. Now, I can't remember them off the top of my head, and I've got a video on it actually. I'll put a link in this video for that that goes into the facets and why people can get mixed results. So I need to just put a pause on this video and I'll come back to it. So I've had to come back to this video later in the day, had to get a few things done. So I've lost a little bit of the flow of what I was saying. I'm going to have to find my way back into this video. And so I might repeat myself, or there might not feel like there's a flow to it, but I'll find my way back there. I just wanted to recap on the fact that it's not about being critical against psychologists or clinical psychologists or those that are educated or not educated. It really doesn't matter. What matters is to keep in mind that of the bias that we have and the position that we're holding and the journey that we've had personally, and see that essentially is a bias and that there are other ways of viewing things. And it's about holding that balance, that those that have gone down the clinical psychology path have honed skills, but they may also have some vulnerabilities as a result of that honing. And there just needs to be a rounding out of those vulnerabilities and the potential weaknesses of that. And similar to those that haven't had that clinical training, that there could be some vulnerabilities with that as well, and there just needs to be awareness to that and corrections and learning different skills and so on. So it's not about being critical or that there's only one way to look at things. The professor that the subscriber is referring to is coming at it from a particular lens. And once we understand that lens, we then understand why they might be coming at it from a particular angle. And in a sense, the reality is that he's right in a lot of sense, in the sense that it isn't scientific. It's not a complete theory. It's not a complete system. But that doesn't mean it's invalid or that there's no truth in it. It's about gleaning the truth that can be gained from it. And again, it's not about making solid decisions based on the Myers-Briggs information, but it be a guide. It be a way of looking at the self, seeing what fits and what doesn't fit, and acknowledging how the sort of things that it doesn't answer or explain. So you can imagine someone that's climbed the ladder of academia, that then looks at the MBTI and looks at its background and so on. You could understand that they would see it as horoscopes and tarot cards of just pot luck. But looking at it from a different lens and understanding its vulnerabilities and the why of its apparent inaccuracies, you get a balance of the picture. So, in case I didn't go over it before, I think there was a few other reasons to explain why there can be an inconsistency of test results. So one of them I think I did refer to was that people often will come to me saying I'm on the borderline with J and the P, or the thinking and the feeling, or the extrovert introvert, and it's because they probably have some out of preference results, and if they are 50-50, and the theory would say there isn't such a thing as a 50-50, that there is a natural leaning, and that's all that the MBTI is looking for. So if a person is toggling, like they'll do the test one week and they come out as an I, and they do it the next week, they come out an E. Really what's most likely happening there is when they're asking the questions, they're answering one or two questions and flip-flopping. So like answer 51% extrovert, 49% introvert, and then the next time they do it, that one question is over on the other side, creating an extrovert, and that's where a lot of the confusion can come in, and where a lot of criticism can come into the picture is the public, if you like. I think this is both, like everything, there's a plus and a minus to this, is that the MBTI is available to anybody who wants to do it for free. And that makes it really accessible. The plus and the minus of it being available so easily publicly is that, well, that is the plus, that it is available easily for people publicly when it comes to the free assessments that's out there. But with that comes problems. With it comes people just going into it without really thinking about what they're doing. Of course, they're not supposed to think about what they're doing. They don't know that maybe we need to look at it or answer the questions in a certain way. Sorry, let me say that differently. There needs to be a certain mindset coming into answering the questions. So, and then they can go along getting these mixed results, and then that sort of filters through through society, that it's wishy-washy, that it's inaccurate and things like that. A lot of that can be eliminated through the way a person does the assessment and understands that it's looking for an inborn traits and a best fit type, not a perfect type. It's an incomplete theory, so it needs to be handled as such, if you like. It's a lens. It's a way of looking at things. I think there's more in that I wanted to talk about, but I'll keep moving on and maybe I'll come back to it. So the next paragraph, I do agree after this research that the MBTI, there are issues that can prove very problematic when used in the workplace, and I would agree. The way it should be used, or the best way to use it, is not as a recruiting tool, but as a way of let's say we find ourselves in a role, and then we do the MBTI assessment and we get our type. We can then look at the role that we're doing through the lens of type and see that what areas might be a struggle, why things might be costing more energy than you would think it would. It's a way of looking at, like, let's say the person comes out with a certain type, and the functions that they're performing in the workplace fit their type. It will make a whole lot of sense why. If a person gets their type and they really resonate with it, and then they look at the job they're doing, and it can help make a lot of sense as to why they're struggling in the role, what their vulnerabilities are in the role, what growth areas we would say are there. And so from there, the person's able to, what they would call, flex their type, which is to be more consciously operating outside of their natural preference to get the job done. It's still going to cost them more energy than someone that's better suited cognitively to the role, but they know why they're tired, and it can take away a lot of the frustration around the role, around the task. And from where I come from, like doing a workplace, like let's say a team do the Myers-Briggs, it's up to each individual as to whether they volunteer what their result is. It's their result. It belongs to them. It doesn't belong to the company. It doesn't belong to the employer. It belongs to the employee, period. So it's up to them if they reveal the type. And maybe just as a side note, if there is some prejudice that takes place inside a workplace after type is revealed, and bullying and things like that, then you could look at it and blame the MBTI for that, or you could actually see that you could say the MBTI assessment and let's say some like some team development work, and out of all of that over the coming weeks was bullying and prejudice based on type. It's really revealing the organisation has a problem. Now, the whole idea of a team workplace development on MBTI would be to help eliminate misunderstandings and conflict and that sort of thing. That would be the desire. If people were going to use it in a different use it to control and manipulate, then it's highlighting poor character. And that's a separate issue, and that would just need to be dealt with within the workplace. I understand that a lot of what I might be saying is going away from a lot of what's being said, but hopefully it's just a kind of a holistic way of looking at all of this. So keep reading here. I read of cases where versions of MBTI that were used as screening tools for potential employees did not account for barriers such as language or disability, leading to skewed test results, inaccurate interpretations, and discrimination lawsuits. Well, there you go. I sort of went into that in a certain way. When the MBTI is used as a recruiting tool, it's just simply problematic. It shouldn't be done. And if it's being used like that, which it shouldn't, but if it's being used like that in a rigid way, yes, it can be very harmful to people. And because it's just being used as like the only tool that we need to use to determine the suitability of a placement, a workplace placement. Yeah, people are going to get hurt by that. And it's just that essentially your to the subscriber, your statement there is why it should not be used as a recruiting tool. Going on, however, I still don't believe that it's so comparable to horoscopes, and I agree. I suppose my NI tells me its real purpose and value lies beyond what Western science validates, and I would absolutely validate that statement. It goes into what I was saying earlier. Reading on. I was curious on your thoughts on these matters. The MBTI has been widely used to predict career choices and screen employees, which it should not. How accurate or useful do you think MBTI can be used in these situations? I think I've answered that. Or are there certain situations in the workplace that you would not recommend it? Well, I think I've answered that. Where I would recommend it is in individual development and team development. Once the team is in place, or if there's a team in place, then using the MBTI to understand cognitive functions and how they might how they complement the role that the person has, and then recognize where they need to stretch themselves a little bit to fulfill the role, and also develop themselves. It's very useful. And from a team development perspective, we can then take all of that and work out how best to work with one another based on type, to avoid misunderstanding. Understand that when someone who prefers thinking is being very logical and analytical, to the feeling type, they could feel very cold, or they could be judged as controlling or judgmental. When they understand the feeling and the thinking difference, it can eliminate a lot of that, a lot of judgment, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of conflict, and the two are able to work much better with one another because they can then value the preference of thinking versus just feeling, rather than feeling the, like almost unconsciously feeling the difference, like not knowing why they're not getting along with this person. It can help to eliminate a lot of that. And why do you think it has become so utilized, associated with career assessment? If I see a client who's looking for work, looking for a career change, I might suggest the Myers-Briggs career assessment to help explore possibilities. But that's their own individual journey. It's got nothing to do with an employer or future or current employers and their assessment of them. It's just their own assessment. So the way it can work is we get the report back, the career report back, that has both their confirmed type that we would need to assess for its accuracy. Just go through it, make sure that it's fitting together based on how they answer the questions, and then look at the options. But when I do career assessment, I look at their past employment history. We look at their passions, their hobbies, look at their goals and their dreams, and do a holistic assessment and gather all of that information together, including the Myers-Briggs report, to help explore potential direction. And I think used in that way, it can be very helpful when it is used from the place of, okay, here's your career report. It says that your top jobs are this, that, and the other, and that's it. You need to go and get that job, whether you have interest in it or not. I'd say that's fairly rare, but I'm sure it's happened where it's been taken as black and white. This is the only jobs that I'm suited to do, and find out that for other reasons it doesn't fit them. So moving on here, I believe MBTI is far more than the carnival tricks of horoscopes, but also can't put it well into words exactly why I feel that way. Do you have insights or words that might explain it a little better? Well, I tried to, I think, explain that earlier, in that almost because it's an incomplete theory, there's wriggle room for exploration. It's a lens to help understand aspects of self, not the complete self. And to that extent, it can be very helpful to highlight the way in which we, in regards to taking in information, making decisions, and the way in which we orientate ourselves into the world and so on, how we get energy and things like that. I think because it's not scientific is why it is valuable. Now that might sound like, ironically, against some people's religion to say that, but I think I'm making a point here, is that science to some extent has become a religion, but the scientific method is not the issue. The scientific method is fine. The Myers-Briggs is a theory, and I think the proof really is in testimony. How people, you meet an INFP, INFJ, or even NFs generally, and it can be hugely validating. I think that's true for other types, although I think culture validates them more often than not. So it doesn't have the same resonance for them when they first come across it. Not necessarily. Some might really grab onto it. It's not a one or the other. And I think it just highlights the issue of the dualism, like the dual mind versus what I'd call the contemplative mind, which is dualistic thinking, in that the MBTI is either good or bad. This is good or bad, that's good or bad, this is right, this is wrong. And seeing life from that place can be very rigid. When we hold what I would say like a non-judgmental position, which is another way of saying a contemplative space, we can see things from many different angles. I think I'm trying to sort of provide that in the way that I'm presenting my information here in this video, that we can put ourselves over here and look at a situation and see things from a different angle, understand the why of it from this angle. But if we go, well, this is the only way of looking at it, now we've missed out on all the different angles that we could look at a situation or a problem or whatever it is. And so a lot of people find security in rigid thinking, in just seeing things from one perspective. And nailing themselves down to systems and ways of looking at things. What I'm saying, I think, is beyond MBTI in this statement, in that for a lot of people, and we're probably talking about more like the spiritual journey, if you like, for the want of a different term, is that we grow up fairly black and white. We think we know everything, or we know what we know and all of that, and then life happens and life becomes grayer. And that's actually a very freeing place to be, is the breaking down of the black and the white to create more grey, and enables us to see things from many different perspectives. It leaves us open to seeing things differently, and that it frees us up to be able to look at things from different directions. So I'll just keep reading here. Last, in brackets I promise, the MBTI has often been administered unofficially or altered in some way, and sometimes unfairly associated with personality quizzes like, which Disney princess are you? Not a big fan of those. Again, maybe a bit of fun, you know, have a bit of fun with it, but it's probably what also leads to the ridiculing of the MBTI, that it's nonsense. But it's also my understanding that the official original version of the test is very long, expensive, and difficult to access. Is there a happy medium to the test that is affordable but is still highly accurate? Okay, let me talk to this one a little bit. So there's an organization or a company called CPP Incorporated, I believe it is, and they bought the MBTI from Myers-Briggs. I'm pretty sure this is how it goes. They at least got the rights to it, and they're the only company that have the official version, if you like, of the assessment tool, and so they own it, and then there's offices around the world, and then you can, with a fee, go and become certified to administer that the assessment and have access to the reports, and that comes at a cost. So there is a big difference between doing an online assessment and doing it for free, and then doing it officially and having to pay money. And it's all about weighing up whether paying the money will fast track a person in resolving all of the complications that I've already referred to in these videos, the confusion around the different results, recognizing that there can be out of preference results and all of that. And that essentially, when we pay money, we're paying for additional information that helps us, that we might not be aware of, that helps get our result and deal with any confusion or misunderstanding, and then drill down into that type based on their uniqueness. So the way it works with myself is a client would pay for the type of report that they require, and there's a whole range of reports, and they're on my website, just by the by, if you want to have a look at them. Not all of them, just the ones, the key ones, I think, that people choose. And then they go online and they answer the assessment, get a key password and all of that. Then I get the report sent to me, and then we organise a consultation and go through that. So there's essentially two charges. There's the paying of the actual assessment, and then which comes with the report, and then there's the consultation where we go through the report and we unpack it. The happy medium, I think I've said this in other videos, would be taking the information essentially from this video and then doing the assessment and finding your best fit type. And then from there, it's not about sticking rigidly cognitively with your type, but having it to help answer what it can answer in regards to yourself, and at the same time see what it doesn't answer. So just looking at the question, it says the test is very long. Well, it might be, but it needs to be. The step 2 results, 93 questions, takes maximum 30 minutes, I would say, and the 144 questions takes maybe allow 45 minutes. I think there's some online versions that have like lots of questions. There's some that have 20, 30, 40, 50, that sort of thing, maybe more. But it's not, I wouldn't call it very long. I would say that it's adequately long to be able to have enough questions to, in a sense, force the person to essentially choose a preference, ultimately through the tallying of all the results. Expensive, it can be, depending on who you do it through. Some people have a huge markup when it comes to what the report costs versus what they charge the client, and then some people choose. The consultation fee is really the issue. Some people charge up to $450 an hour to do a Myers-Briggs consultation. In my world, that's outrageous. I charge a fraction of that to do a consultation, but it does cost money. And the word expensive is relative in a sense, because it really depends on one's situation. If you're in, my subscriber is a junior in college, so probably not a huge amount of finances. So from that perspective, it probably is expensive. For somebody who's working, who's in a career, who's earning a decent amount, it probably wouldn't be considered expensive. In fact, it would probably be value for money for what it could offer them. And difficult to access, I'm not sure about that. I guess it all depends on one's location and local resources and things like that. But I think it's fairly accessible with a little bit of research. It should be able to be someone that is able to provide provide the assessment. Should be easily accessible. A happy medium, it's a tricky thing. basically, when you pay, you get benefits from paying. When you do it for free, you get benefits for, essentially financially for doing it for free. But then you have to do your own, educate yourself in how to look at it. What are the potential pitfalls, and then continue doing more research to continue to understand the self. So in a sense, the doing it professionally and paying money saves the person a whole lot of time that they may not have. So if they don't have the time, they value the cost, because they get all the information without having to go and find it for themselves. Doing it for free, obviously the person is free if they've got the time to then look around and read things. There's so much to read. The information's out there, but you've just got to go on your own search. I think that pretty much covers it, and I hope that I've provided a balanced assessment and take on things. So I think that this video has turned out to be about an hour long, so if you've made it to the end, congratulations, and I hope it's been worth your time. And that if you're looking at the MBTI for the first time, then maybe this will help to sort of avoid some of the difficulties or the misunderstandings and the confusion around the MBTI. Utilize it for what it can do, recognize what it can't do, see that it is simply a lens to look at the self. Even though it's not scientific, it has a lot to offer. But I wouldn't look at it as a complete theory or a complete way of looking at the self. That would be a really silly move. It is a way to look at the self. The self, which is very complex. We're complex beings. So I would just recommend using the MBTI as a useful tool to your development and your self-understanding and the understanding of others, but don't set up base camp here in the MBTI. Continue to ask more questions, continue to move forward in your own development. Try and maintain a balanced approach to all things, that whenever somebody is too hard line on a particular area, chances are they're blinded themselves in some way, in some respect. Maybe not, but look at it from the angle that you can, from all the different angles. And for the professor, it's very understandable his position on it, and he's not to be ridiculed or to be criticized in any way. From his position, it makes sense that the MBTI would look like that, and I think just a balanced approach is the best. So if academia is a person's journey, and if it's through psychology, recognize the discipline of what it is, see how it benefits your development and your developing of skills. See how though that it could be also rigid in certain ways, and you could miss out on vital information if you're like too clinical, too methodical in your approach. You could lose the person that you're talking to. Maybe this is a nice place to segue into and just finish this video off. Is there's people that are gifted to do counselling, and then there's those that do the training to become a counsellor, and that both can do a great job, but there's a real difference between the two. And those that have, I think, the most success, you could say, are those that have a balance of the clinical and the personal that are able to connect to the client, as well as understand the complexity of some of the issues from a clinical position. And when we're doing any kind of study, especially when it comes to becoming therapists or counselors, the study for the most part is separate to the practical. So for me, when I did my counseling degree, and I found myself with my first client, that is a totally different ball game. And it's kind of like you learn about counseling in college and university, and then you graduate and then you learn how to be a counselor. And eventually those skills and the theory gets integrated into the self as the therapist, and you work on your own stuff as well. And a lot of that working on your own stuff happens while you're learning about all the different learning all the theory, and then you learn how to present yourself and hone your tools and your skills to meet the client where they are and provide a space for change to take place. So there's the art of counseling, and then there's the science, if you like, of counseling. And from my perspective, well, I don't think one's better than the other, but essentially one becomes more comfortable with one or the other. I'm personally much more comfortable with the art of counseling, where it's an art form, and every session is very different to another session, versus the science, which is like that more hardline clinical approach that is necessary. It's necessary, especially for certain types of people, certain types of clients, I mean, that require the discipline that comes through the clinical practice. So there's a place for that, and it's really about figuring out where one wants to put themselves. I'm classified as a clinical counselor, but in that I'm aware that it's an art form. So in summarizing, it is a balance of the technical skill and the personal skill, the ability to meet the client personally and help them clinically. I hope this explanation answers those questions to my subscriber, and maybe go into other areas that we weren't expecting. Anyway, I hope you liked what you heard. I hope it gives a balanced perspective, and I'll see you again in another video.